Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by TheLions.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by Nate Weitzer. He's on the East Coast. And we got Playa Props, the bread and butter here for your boys as we look at the Tuesday night NBA slate. Just 5 games to choose from here. We've also got best bets up with some sides and totals looks, and some player prop parlays that we added in there with such a small slate for you guys as well. So definitely make sure to check that out. Subscribe to the page and continue to follow along with us all season here. Let's go ahead and jump right into your first player prop for the night, Nate, as we try to sift through this thing here.
Yeah, Austin Reeves alluded to it on Friday that his props have kind of calmed down enough to take him, and then AD sat, and Austin goes for a career-high 38. We don't know if AD is going to play tonight, but give me the 26.5 points and assists for Austin Reeves here. I think he'll still have elevated usage and minutes with AD and LeBron getting a little bit of a blow here with the Wizards in town. It's a 13.5 point spread for the Lakers. As I mentioned earlier, like they host Boston on Thursday, then they have 6 straight road games. So those veterans going to need some rest. AD dealing with the calf that kept him out on Friday. And you look at the last 8 without Anthony Davis for Reeves, 23.6 points, 6 assists, usage rate elevated by 5%, hitting 3.3 threes at 40%. And I am also intrigued here by slightly plus money for 3 threes. He's gotten 8 straight with at least 2 triples, gotten to the 3 in 4 of those last 8. And, you know, that's with those guys in and out. And then, of course, it's the Wizards. Like, they're awful everywhere, but particularly allowing the most threes to shooting guards, 4.6 per game and 27 points to the position. So definitely expect him to continue eating here. I don't think the Lakers can afford to like throw backups in there by any means, but AR is sort of the secondary option, like the plan B. Like, okay, LeBron can't really have high usage here. Maybe AD doesn't go. Like, we need to run everything through AR, who's been pretty fantastic. The last 7 at home, averaging 23 and 9.7 on 26% usage. So those numbers without AD going back to last season are, it's a different player, different situation where he wasn't at all like a top 1 or 2 option. And when they finally, signaled that by moving D'Lo out of town, was like, AR is absolutely going to be running this team. So I think, you take him now after he had a couple of tougher matchups where he went under. Now his props are down.
Yep. Yeah, this is a nice buy low spot for AR 15 there. So yeah, I'm with you on Austin. I think he's a good look against the Wiz. Just another guy that, like, well, he's not a backup. He's not too young. He's not like hunting minutes. He is a guy that you're going to feel comfortable having on the court as, like, all right, if we put AR out there with a bunch of dudes that I don't necessarily trust against the Wizards, I'm still okay with that because I have Austin Reeves on the floor and I can trust him to be backup LeBron in that sense. So without the ability to do all the things LeBron does, you get what I mean. Control the offense and the tempo that JJ wants. So, all right, let me go over to that Magic in Toronto game. I feel like we have at least enough to be able to get some really good props out of that. I'm going to take Jakob Poeltl. I'm going to go against the grain here and take his boards over 10.5 rebounds. And what I mean by take that go against the grain is you don't really want to take Orlando, like centers like playing the Orlando Magic in general. Not a great look usually. This is not your, what do we say, older brothers Orlando. This is just not the same team from earlier this year. There's no Mo, there's no Franz, there's no Goga. It's just that simple. Jonathan Isaac can't play more than 12 minutes without any other center on the floor. Jonathan Isaac is still such a detriment to his team's offense that Jamal Mosley cannot play him more than like 12 to 15 minutes. So now we're talking about a lot of Wendell Carter Jr. I expect him at another 32, 34 minutes like he's been at for the last 2 games. And that initially, it can go 2 ways, right? Like Wendell Carter Jr. is going to pull you from the basket on defense and shoots a few more threes. He's only taken an average of like 4 in his last like 10 games. So Wendell Carter's not like a heavy, not even 4, 2. In his last 2 games, rather, he's taken an average of 4 because he's gotten more minutes. Still, that's a 4 or 5 threes. Poeltl will be moved out a little bit, but you're also going to get him on the baseline guarding Wendell Carter Jr., so he's still going to be in position for those boards. And really, without everybody for Orlando, and you have Wendell Carter Jr., you look at the way that this team has played over the course of the last 7 games or so. Power forwards have done a little bit better getting those rebounds over them, but I'm still good with Poeltl, who, when he plays 32-plus minutes, is averaging 11.8 rebounds per game. If you look at him on the floor without IQ or Ochai Agbaji, just to get the, you're going to have more Grady Dick, a bit more Jamal Shed in there as well. When you get those guys out there, it's just worse rebounders. He's got 11.6 rebounds per 36 minutes without those guys. Still good for about an 11 rebound projection, but I'm giving him a little bit of a bump because he's just going to be the best rebounder on the floor at all times, is really just what it comes down to. And when you have Scotty Barnes playing without IQ, his rebounds go down to 7 per 36 minutes. His assists go up to 9 per 36 minutes. So it's what I talked about in the best bets episode. Scotty Barnes, point guard, means a lot more of him up top, obviously, and drive and kick stuff, or drive and throw the lob to Pirtle. IQ means a lot more shots above the break. So this is better for Pirtle to even get offensive rebounds, because those shots should be a little bit closer to the basket with Scotty playing point guard. So I think he's going to be in good position for this one to get at least 10.5. I think he's good for 12 boards.
Yeah, and we gotta like Scotty as well, mentioning his role here. Maybe Bruce Brown too, kind of welcome to the season. With the Agbaji out, he might be able to follow up on a couple of nice performances. But yeah, either way, like Orlando's interior is something to exploit right now. They just don't have that toughness with those guys out. So yeah,
and I want to mention, because you brought up Bruce Brown, he has been officially, basically just officially placed on the trading block. So you might get a few more BB minutes if they need to audition him for a trade, to your point.
Oh yeah, then Denver should go get him back, man. That would be nice. But yeah, I mean, speaking of lack of toughness or just weirdness, Miami Heat, I think, are exploitable here with Denny Avdia, who's I think the safe play here, maybe 10.5 RA is pretty good odds, but I'm like, honestly, I think he's getting 8+ boards to get you over that. So that's plus 145 at FanDuel. It's a ladder opportunity. Guy has 12 boards in his last 2, including one against the Heat. He missed 3 games in between there. You might say, oh, well, Jeremy Grant was out for a while, for 8 straight, and Avdia was starting, averaging 8.3 boards, 3.8 assists. But then, Grant comes back and they just started alongside each other. And he goes for 20 and 12 the last time out. Now we know Klingon's out, Time Lord questionable, Anthony Simons questionable, which would just be a huge void for Portland in terms of usage and minutes. And 4 without Simons this year. Avdia's had 12 rebounds per 36. He's a plus 10. He's going to be a key player here against this new look Heat team, which, since the Jimmy saga sort of started 10 games ago, and they've just kind of been sucking at times and more inconsistent than usual. They've allowed the 5th most rebounds per game, the 3rd most assists per game, including 32 assists per game in their 4 home games. So it's almost like your defensive coordinator or your coach on the floor, and Jimmy is out there, but he's just like, I'm going to just sabotage you guys. I'm just going to blow my assignment. I'm not going to talk. I'm not going to do anything. I don't want to be here. I mean, I know he's suspended for some of these games, but it's just the vibes are not good. And your defensive personnel is not going to be good without Jimmy Butler out there. Avdia actually leads the team in rebounding chances in these last 8 he's played, grabbing 2/3 of them, 14 rebound chances, leads the team in passes with 50 per game. And he has at least 2 assists in 12 straight, averaging 12 RA in that span. But I think the boards are even more reliable here, given Miami's struggles on offense at times and just the vulnerability of this team on both ends.
Yep. Yeah. Always, I'm looking for rebound props against the Heat these days, which is wild to say. But this is a bad rebounding team at this point overall. And I didn't know if that was going to change after the first quarter of the season or not. But yeah, the guy who's probably going to be losing some time, it should be Jeremy Grant. But if Jeremy Grant comes back and takes anything from anybody, it's going to be Toumani Camara, who, to be honest, I would rather just have Toumani Camara out there than Jeremy Grant. I just never understand it. But then again, I didn't understand signing Jeremy Grant to another $120 million after you traded. It just doesn't make any sense in Portland. It's a tire fire. Denny Avdia is final. This is the first time we're saying it this season, Nate. That's the adult in the room. That's the adult in the room on that team is Denny Avdia, who is bringing some form of stability, even though he was sort of known as a wild card sometimes in Washington. This is the dude bringing stability now to this squad. And I love the continued looks for him on the RA and the assist whenever he's playing, with or without Jeremy Grant at this point. I really hope Toumani's the one that eats the Jeremy Grant minutes, and we don't have to worry about that too much. But let me go over back to that Toronto game to close us out and take Paolo Banchero over 24.5 points, minus 108 on Bet Rivers, and it is coming back down to like 24.5, minus 120 in other places. So there's a bunch of 24.5s hanging around now. This was kind of hovering between 25 and 24. Let me just start by saying I did see the quote. Shout out Jason Beatty, one of the best beat guys there in Orlando, was talking about he got a one-on-one with Mosley, and Mosley said of Paolo Banchero that they're taking it slow, that it's basically a game-by-game scenario based on how he feels. He's played 29, 27, 30 minutes or so in the 5 games back. He's played anywhere from like 27 to 31 or whatever in that time frame. So I think he's good for 30. Like I think he's probably pretty fed up at this point and would like to just get a W, and is at least seeing this as a viable option for a W, even though I don't think he's going to get one in this game. It's a viable option. So if you give him the 27 to 30 minutes, then I'm still good with it. I mean, this Toronto defense is just going to continue to hemorrhage points from pretty much everywhere. It's going to hemorrhage assists as well. So I did like the 4.5 assists. It opened at plus money for Paolo. Now it's down, and you're probably gonna have to get it at 5.5 before too long. But even points and assists, I'm okay with. I just think he's gonna just like take over the game, and that there's really nobody on the other team to stop him. This team is giving up the 5th most points per game to the power forward position. They don't really have one. I mean, it's Scotty, right? And like then Chris Boucher comes out sometimes, and that's like their backup shooting guard more than their backup power forward or center for Boucher. So I'm not worried about him either, to be honest, or Kelly O either on defense. So like the bigs are going to have their hands full. And then for Paolo, if we get Scotty Barnes on him, like still okay with that. Honestly, if you look at Paolo in his last season versus this team, had one bad game, but in the other 2 averaging about 26 points per game against this team with Franz Wagner out there. And without Franz, he's averaged about 32.5 points per game on average when he's playing fully healthy, which he has not been yet. And I understand he's not going to be in this one. But I'm still not worried about it, because Paolo, if you're a guy who can drive to the rim, you're going to score against the Toronto Raptors. And guess who drives to the rim the most on his team? Top 5 most in the NBA last season, top 12 in the NBA 2 seasons ago. So this dude is driving to the rim, roughly like 14, 15 times per game when he plays a full slate of minutes. So even if you give him like 12 drives to the game against this team, they're horrible. Limiting cuts, limiting drives, limiting anybody coming off of a screen or an on-ball screen or an off-ball screen. They're bad. They're just not a good defensive squad in that sense. They're bottom like 10 in every single one of those categories. So I think Paolo's good for the 25 today. If he plays the 30, I think it's really just going to come down to him being like, I'm tired of this shit. Let me go get mine. The last thing here, Toronto gives up the most free throws in the league. So another example of how if you drive to the rim, and Paolo does rely on free throws a good amount. So the perfect game for him, basically.
Yeah, and you mentioned adding on the assists. I think that's a much better look than messing with the rebounds. You look at the data since he's come back, and he's just like not really sticking his nose in there for boards and risking re-injury in that way. But with Suggs and Franz out, like he's been facilitating a ton. We're looking at 4 assists per game on 12 potential assists. Yeah. And to go 28.5 points assists, you're only tacking on the 4 that he's averaging, and now he's facing the worst defense he's faced since returning, right? Yeah. Certainly in terms of assists and allowing primary drivers to facilitate. So I think you can add those on for a little more safety.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about it. The only thing that kept me away from it is like when I see him with 15 potentials and 5 assists or 14 potentials and 4 assists, I'm like, well, that's because he has the worst 3-point shooting team in the league around him, and you got to rely on the guys around him to make shots. I don't know if I want to base my Paolo bet on Trevelin Queen hitting an open shot. It's just all I'm saying, which was the best name I could think of in my head for that example. But that's all the time we have for you. This one, definitely want to make sure to subscribe to that page. Check out the best bets that we've got up alongside these player props, bringing both episodes each and every weekday this season. So until we see you next, happy betting.